Network Asia.
Welcome to She Talks Peace, a podcast that highlights the role of women peacebuilders around the world in bringing lasting peace and security to communities. Eavesdrop on their communities and get to know their stories. From the Philippines to Malaysia, from Indonesia to Palestine, from Myanmar to the United States. Their dreams and hopes for a world without violence and a world where every woman and girl can be whoever she wants to be. Hosted by Amina and Bernardo, President of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy. This is She Talks Peace.
Salam, dear listeners. Welcome to She Talks Peace. This is Amina Rasul Bernardo of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy, greeting you from Manila. And here's my tireless co-host who has finally rejoined us today.
Hi, Amina. Hi, everybody, to all our audience in She Talks Peace. This is Ayesah, and I'm based here in Penang, Malaysia, in Pulau Pinang. So my backdrop is still in Kota Kinabalu, Sabah, but I've actually moved here, a week ago, and I'm just in between jobs. So I'll be joining a new university next week, which I will announce to you next week. Yeah, hi,
Wow.
Amina. How are you?
But your heart is still in Sabah, huh?
That's right. I really missing Mount Kinabalu. So, how are things in Manila? Anything new?
Oh, lots and lots of interesting things. You've been away from Mindanao for a little while, and we celebrated the 9th anniversary of the signing of the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro. There was a
Yes.
event. There was an event to celebrate it, and I was one of the speakers together with our friend Coronel Ferrer, who was the chief negotiator for the government. Chief Minister Ibrahim was there as well. And syempre naman, as usual, Ayesah, when it was my turn to give my comments, I asked about, what about the women? But Ayesah, apart from that, while you were away recuperating from your surgery, we had some really interesting conversations on our podcast. We had
Oh, yeah.
last episode, Ona Caritos, attorney Ona Caritos of the Legal Network for Truthful Election was our guest, and we had an interesting talk about women in Philippine politics and what she thought about the electoral code of the Bangsamoro.
Oh, very interesting conversation.
Especially since
Must be.
Ayesah, the Bangsamoro region was able to include in the electoral code 30% of candidates of any party has to be women. Isn't that nice?
Oh,
Something-
okay. That's
yeah.
good. Congratulations to the
Congratulations
legislators
to
of BARM.
Yeah,
Yeah.
congratulations to your friends, Ayesah, who are in the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, who maybe
Yeah.
are seen as parang troublemakers by by the men. So, and then before that, Dr. Socorro Reyes we also talked about Philippine politics and misogyny.
Mhm.
The
Oh,
harassment
too bad I
of
missed that.
politicians. So lots of interesting discussions that we had while you were away. But we were hoping that you'd be well so that we can have
Yeah.
our conversations again.
Actually, I was in Manila 2 weeks ago. I was in Manila for a straight 1 week, with my daughter because I was doing my artificial eye with my ocularist. An ocularist is somebody who makes an artificial eye. So the technician making artificial eye. So I was there for a week, but I made sure I did not do any work I did not contact anybody for work, including you. I have to admit,
Yeah,
because I was really just focused on, meeting my doctors. I had two doctors in Manila. So that's what I did. Yeah. But now I'm back slowly. Yesterday we were talking in our personal chat, about the challenges that we actually face as women. Especially for the both of us who are Bangsamoro women, and we actually belong to two generations of women. That I think many times we tend to forget the challenges that we've gone through, and how we have been in a way helping every generation of women and transitioning, so that we can have more successor generations. Like when I met you, Amina, for the benefit of the audience, I was actually still a student when I first met Miss Amina Rasul Bernardo. That time you were the chair of the National Youth Commission. That right,
that's right.
Amina? And then I was a delegate. I was one of the delegate of the Ship for Southeast Asian Youth Program. Yeah.
That's right.
19, should we say the year?
Never
19.
mind. Never mind. As the Tagalogs would say, 19 kopong kopong. I never really
Oh,
understood what 19 kopong kopong meant, but
yeah.
that's how you get away from mentioning
Yeah.
years. But I remember those years at the National Youth Commission from zero, from scratch. We had to create a government agency that would be responsible for developing the development policy for youth. And I remember very well this very aggressive, vocal young Muslim women, you and
I
Samira.
don't think so. I don't think so. I think that applies more to Samira, but not to me. Yeah, but going back to the time when you became chair of NYC, let's face it, during those days, kasagsagan, if I can say it in Filipino, kasagsagan pa yun ng armed conflict in Mindanao. And then you became, you were put in that position, minister level, and not many Bangsamoro people and a woman at that can get that opportunity. How did it end up in your lap that you were appointed by President Fidel V. Ramos as part of his cabinet?
I remember in those days, the first year of his presidency, I was already sending little notes to uh, Joe Almonte, who was his national security advisor, saying that, we have got to get young people involved in interfaith dialogue, Ayesah. And Joe Almonte liked the idea very much, had a meeting with me, and I had this idea. I think you even participated in organizing this. We had the Light a Candle for Peace, and we did that in all the regions, including our areas in Mindanao. And we had thousands and thousands of young people, students, college and high school students coming together to pray for peace. And I think after that, uh, FDR, the late President Fidel V. Ramos, probably had me in mind, because after that, Ayesah, what he did was he asked me to help him organize a youth wing for the political party. Oh my goodness, I haven't thought about that in the longest time. I became Secretary General of Lakas Youth. And do you remember
Oh, okay.
Ranjit?
Yes.
Remember Ranjit?
Ranjit. Yes,
He was
yes,
the
yes.
nephew of
Uh-huh.
President Ramos.
And of
Ranjit's
course, Senator
mother,
Leticia
Senator,
Shahani. Yeah.
yes, Senator Shahani, was in the Senate with my mom, Senator Rasul.
Mm-mm.
So Ranjit was the president of Lakas Youth, and I was
Mm-mm.
his Secretary General. And it was after
Oh,
that,
great.
after we were
Okay.
working to help young people find a voice within the Lakas party of President Ramos, that he told me, I have an assignment for you. And he said, I want a youth agency. And at that time, there was
Yeah.
already a bill on the creation of the National Youth Commission. So he said, I want you to do that. And make sure the law is passed and then organize it. And this is the thing about women. You never say, I can't do it, right?
That's true.
Right?
That's
Your
true. Just
boss,
take it. Just take
your
it.
mother, your father says, I want you to do something for me. And what do we
Uh-uh.
do, Ayesah? We think first, okay, how am I going to do this? So I
Yeah.
told the president, said, okay, sir, I never really thought about how difficult it was. So
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
what happened. And I'm glad really that he brought me in to his cabinet, because
Mhm.
then I saw how important it was to have a seat at the table.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
you and I, we keep hearing this phrase, right? Seat at the table. Women should have a seat at the table. And we don't really fully grasp what it means until you're there in the room and you have a seat at the table. Then you start saying, what the heck
Yeah.
am I doing here? But you get used to the pressure, and then you start using your seat at the table,
Mm-mm.
push
Mm-mm.
for issues that you think are important. But you, Ayesa, your seat at the table has always intrigued me, because when you were active in Mindanao, anywhere there was a discussion with rebels or a discussion on autonomy and the peace process, you were always there.
I was really never involved about Bangsamoro issues until the all-out war happened, year 2000. So together with my friends, our friends, Samira, Gutok, Jehan Mutin, then we started organizing ourselves, and that was the Young Moro Professionals Network. We really started doing humanitarian work. We raised money, and then we sent all these food donations and packages, during the time of the all-out war. So that was how I was personally affected.
And you
Given
were
that my
very, very noisy. Your group were
yeah.
very noisy. It seemed to me that it was great having your network around, because you were saying things, you were complaining about what was going on, you were focusing on issues like what are you going to do with the refugees, and our political leaders weren't saying much about it. So you were such a noisy group, and I'm
and
so
and
glad
those
that you were a noisy group.
and I remember those sleepless nights when when all these 9/11 happened, and a lot of Bangsamoro people, and even Balik Islam, those Muslim converts in Manila who've been picked up and arrested. And of course, we have to help out when they ask for help. Who's going to represent them legally? Those were really the challenging times. And precisely, as I said, I was in the private sector. I really didn't want to get involved in the first place. But when you actually became part of all these problems, and you realize that we were really very challenged in Manila as Muslims, as Bangsamoro people, because when you have all these, many security problems that are so real, despite that you are a professional Moro, once you are, you experience these things, then there was really no turning back for us, for many of us, that we ended up committing ourselves that we should be part of what's happening in Mindanao. And some of them, the younger generation of Young Moro Professionals Network, they are all there in BARM. Even before BARM, they were already part of Muji Bataman's ARMM, like Jehan Mutin, Rasul Mitmog, and many of them. So we were really very proud that it was a generation of students and professional morals in Manila, and we were really. I think this is our own generation of, is it the awoke generation, the one that they're calling in the States the awoke generation? Yes, we were also awakened because of the all-out war.
Yeah.
So that
Listening to you and remembering the lobbying that you and the Bangsamoro Young Professionals Network would do. For instance, I remember Samira, every time I was going to organize a conference, she would beg, lobby, constantly harass me to give a slot in the
And
conference so that
and
so
I
that
have
the
to.
Bangsamoro young professionals could attend and could voice out. And now that I think about it, it really makes me uh, realize, yes, that the importance of having a voice. I mean, many of our listeners, probably especially the young ones, they would also say, but we can't really do the things that Ayesa and Amina do. But we need to remind them, Ayesa, when we started out, we were not where we are now. I mean, you were a student, not
That's
knowing
true.
what the
That's true, Amina.
future held. I was also a student at the University of the Philippines, just thinking about my future and what job I would have. But somewhere
Mhm.
along the way, when we saw something wrong, injustice to our people, we said,
Mhm.
what the heck? I have a voice.
Yeah.
I'm going to use it. And in many ways,
Yeah.
yes, I'm really glad that we have our podcast, She Talks Peace, because we have been able to give a platform for so many incredible women, to give them a voice, right? And to let them share their stories and perspectives on issues relating to human rights, peace and conflict resolution, and even how they manage stress. So let me ask you,
Yes.
Dr. Ayesa Abubakar Uy, how do you manage stress?
Oh, I watch a lot of Chinese drama, Amina.
You
It's,
understand Chinese?
well, there are subtitles, you know. This has been the result of the pandemic, of all the lockdowns. I was a late bloomer when it comes to all these Korean dramas. So I started with Korean dramas during the pandemic. And then, of course, there's Netflix. But I was really more drawn to, very historical type of dramas. Remember, I mean, I'm a film graduate of the University of the Philippines. Both of us are
Oh yeah,
alumni, but I studied filmmaking.
That's
So when I
right.
watch, when I watch movies or drama, I'm very conscious about the script. How it is directed. The scene itself. How is it? Organized. I really look at this technicality. So that's what draw me to Korean dramas, and eventually I graduated from Korean dramas. I went to Thai dramas. What, although some of the more contemporary Thai dramas are like the Filipino dramas, a lot of too much emotion. But what I like about some of the Thai dramas are the historical ones, because that is where I learned about the old Siam kingdom, Burma, how Burma and Siamese kingdoms were fighting with each other. So I really like watching those dramas. And of course, after watching those dramas, I would research, okay, the history. So that got me hooked onto Thai dramas. And then later on last year, I started now learning about Chinese dramas. Again, I was drawn to all these historical Chinese dramas, because it's an opportunity for me to really understand more about China. Given that I'm also part Chinese, my grandfather on my mother's side, maternal side, is actually, as you said, my name is Uy. My middle name is Uy. So they are immigrant from mainland China. So that's what I do, to distress. I watch my Chinese dramas and I'm happy with it.
You're probably going to be so shocked by what I do to relieve stress. I catch
Oh, what is it?
Pokemon.
Okay.
Really? I catch Pokemon, and on Pokemon Go now, there's this
Okay.
catching uh, bugs that
Okay.
transform. They're called scatterbugs, and you catch enough of
Okay.
them, you can evolve them into a beautiful butterfly. But what I particularly
Oh.
love about Pokemon Go, is that you can have friends from all over. They send you
I see.
postcards, and I love looking at the postcards from time to time, especially when I'm stressed. Because imagine this, I used to have a Pokemon Go friend from Russia. But
Okay.
after the problem in Ukraine, she stopped, he stopped sending postcards. So he had beautiful postcards from Russia, and I've got them from
Oh, okay.
Croatia, from Peru.
Mhm.
I love my Pokemon collection, Ayesah. So that's what I do to de-stress, because you
I
know
think
what? Watching Netflix can sometimes be stressful, particularly
that's
if
true. That's true.
I remember our podcast guests and what they shared with us on how they relieve stress. Ang kana nila Pajit, who's a Ramon
Okay.
Magsaysay awardee from Thailand. Ang kana said she would sew clothes, and that took her mind off her worries, because she had charges filed against her in court. She was going to be
Okay.
imprisoned because she was
Mhm.
fighting for the rights of these young Rohingya women who were employed
Mhm.
in this chicken factory in Thailand. And then another one of our guests from Lebanon, I think that was Maya Yamut. Maya is a really amazing young woman, really beautiful. I mean, she could be a model. And she and her sister Nancy would go to jails to work with the arrested, the convicted extremists. And to
Mhm.
distress, they would open the window and watch the birds, listen to the birds on the tree.
Oh, that's very
So,
poetic.
just to take your mind off
Mhm.
all of the pressure, something completely unrelated. What's the term they use? You have got to get into
Opposites
the
attract.
zone. You have got to be zen. And I think,
I
Ayesa,
see.
for many of our friends, sometimes it gets to be very, very difficult to get to be zen. So I wish we could have a Netflix show that when you watch it, you are transported and you become
That's right.
Zen. What
You know,
would Sam
I
what would
remember
Sam say? How would Sam help you to become Zen?
he's not going to help me with that. He, he's going to
Dear
add pressure
listeners,
to me.
The
He's
Sam
going
that we're referring to is Ayesah's husband, who is a very strong advocate for peace in Malaysia. So why do you say he won't, Ayesah?
he adds stress to me. But he knows he has his own zone of de-stressing. Of course, his motorbikes, which I shared with you. And same, I think, with your family. Your family is also into motorbikes. Yeah, Zam is into all these big bikes. Yeah, but I wanted to share with you a conversation that Raisa Jajuri and I had. This was during the negotiations, the difficult years of negotiations between the government of the Philippines and the MILF. Because year in and year out, we would invite some friends to come over to Penang for this consolidation for peace. And then, Raisa and I would be brainstorming about, ideas and what else to do to push, for more ideas on the ground so that we can support the peace process. And she was the one, I think, who mentioned something about, how come you have all these ideas? Where is it coming from? How come you are able to, be very creative about these ideas? And I told her that it's okay, Raisa. I mean, I understand that once you are in that zone, they all go home to Mindanao, they all go home to Manila. They are faced with the reality that they are so bombarded with a difficult situation. Whereas for me, I can zone out, zone in, and zone
Mm,
out. I have, because since living in Malaysia and working Malaysia, but then I continue to work for the peace process. I had, I was very fortunate that I can go in, to the situation, to the armed conflict situation. At the same time, I can get out of it and be really creative and get in touch about what is happening outside of the Philippines. And that gives me a lot of ideas and a lot of positive energy. So when I go home to Cotabato City and meet, with some of our friends who are, I have to say, very, hardworking and who are in a stressful environment like you, then I make it a point that I'm supposed to be the one giving all this positive energy and adding, some more positivity to them, because I understand the kind of situation that all of you are in the Philippines. So yeah, that was
Yep.
to me a really important way of supporting each other.
Yep. Dear listeners, the Raisa Jejuri that Ayesa was referring to is a common friend. She was one of the advisors of the negotiating panel of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Today,
And also a
Raisa
UP alumni.
and
UP
Raisa
alumni.
today is the minister of the Bangsamoro Ministry for Social Services and Development. So she's even
I
under
haven't seen
more pressure because
exactly.
now she has to deliver on the
Yeah.
implementation of the peace agreement. So I think really, Ayesa, you have to find a way to bring Raisa and our other friends who are in the thick of the work to implement the
Mhm.
agreement, bring them to Penang so that they can eat satay and just relax so that they can recharge and come up with ideas on how to do the job.
The last time I met Raisa was actually we were together in Tokyo, in Hiroshima in 2014. Yeah, and I know that she is very busy. But as I keep saying to all our friends in Mindanao, everybody's welcome to come to Penang, is so long as you pay for your airfare. And of course, Zam and I will be a very happy host to bring you for food for makan makan. Penang is
Makan-makan.
for the benefit of all our audience, Penang is the food capital of Malaysia. So even among Malaysians, they would come to Penang, where food is sadap and it's mura, cheap and delicious, only in Penang. So please come to and visit me in Penang. Amina.
Oh, so dear listeners, anybody who has interest in summer vacation in Penang, do get in touch with Ayesa Abubakar. Uy, and I'll probably see you there. But Ayesa,
Yeah.
um, since Women's Month will have ended when this episode comes out, I was just
Mm-hmm.
thinking back about what inspired us, for instance, to stay the course, to focus on projecting our voice, of making sure that our voices were not diminished. And I was thinking, who inspired you, Ayesa? And can you share a favorite quote you have from the person who inspired you?
So during the time of the all-out war, I also remember that we used to have this Nokia phones where we can send text messages. So
Right.
I remember receiving a text message apparently from MILF leader Hashim Salamat saying this famous statement about he has planted the seeds among the Muslim youth, the seeds for right to self-determination. I think that quote really made a mark on me since then. So in the same manner, I continue to be, inspired and to be working harder. That if our leaders, our forefathers had that vision that our lives, the lives of Bangsamoro people in the Philippines could become better. If there will be peace, then I continue to look at that as my North Star.
In my case, I think the first person who made me focus on our people and the need to really work on supporting our community. In a way, it was Normi Suari. Nurulaji Miswari, dear listeners, is the founder and chair of the Moro National Liberation Front. And it was, Miswari was also a professor at the University of the Philippines, university that Ayesha and I graduated from. But it was his concept of the Bangsamoro, the Moro nation. Before him, nobody ever talked about all of our peoples as one. We were Tausu, that's me from the islands, Sama from the islands, Yakan from the islands, another province, Maguindanao, Maranao, Jama Mapun. But he had this concept that what united all of these different tribes who were in Mindanao was a shared history, a shared political system, shared educational system, collective tribulations, and the fact that we were all Islamized. Therefore, Bangsa Moro, Bangsa meaning nation, and Moro, well, that's what the Spaniards called us. They came to the Philippines, they saw us Muslims fighting them and defeating them, and they were reminded of the Moors who actually colonized part of Spain. So they called us Moro. So that was the first time I really started thinking about the collective peoples of Muslim Mindanao. But the one who really inspired me, yes, I was my mom. My mom, from the very beginning, she was, when we were small, she was a full-time housewife. She would teach illiterates, adult illiterates in her spare time. And we used to wonder where she found the energy. And she would always tell us, you never forget your roots because you are, advanced in society. You have an obligation and you cannot turn your back on your people. So I guess my mom is the one that really inspired me. But apart from these rebel leaders and mothers, who who has inspired you? I mean, can you think of anybody? I was just thinking about something that Michelle Obama said. For instance, he said, "No country can ever truly flourish
Mhm.
if it stifles the potential of its women and deprives itself of contributions of half of its citizens." It's absolutely right. We are half
True.
of the world. So how can you have a successful society if you do not listen to the point of view of half of the world? I think that's something that we should have to keep drumming, drumming it into the leaders
Mhm.
of our governments and our own Bangsamoro communities. What about you, Ayesa?
I think it's also important for us to remind everybody, Amina, and including ourselves, that we are fortunate, both you and I, that we have had men around us who also supported us to become who we are today. Like for me, in my case, it was really my husband, Professor Kamarul Zaman Askandar, who mentored me to become a scholar and to do peace work and peace building work. So yeah, I have to give it to him because at that time I had no qualms or ideas that I wanted to be part of, the peace process. It wasn't really in my mind at all. But he was really the one who gave me the motivation that, look, you can be, somebody who can contribute to your own people. If you become a scholar, if you become an academic, and you become a practitioner in peace building, you can be that if you want to. And then secondly, while I was also doing, my own scholarship, studying at the time, I was already doing my PhD and relearning about our history as Bangsamoro people. I have to say, all your writings, all the publications that you've done, I've gone through all of it, read it, And suddenly, when I was doing it, I realized, oh my gosh, Amina Bernardo has done these things, you know, and it is now, it's something that is so useful in my own education. I think if I'm sure, when you were doing all these projects, publications with Conrad Adenauer, with PCID, you were doing it, as part of your own work, contributing to the peace process. But lo and behold, it actually contributed to my own education. So that, I think I remember sending you an email no one time, because of course when I first knew you, I knew already that it's really amazing that you, as a Muslim lady, has been able to be part of the government at one time, despite all the challenges that you had to face, being a Muslim and being a female, but you were able to do that. So two people,
I'm
you
so,
and my
I'm
husband.
so glad, Ayesah. I'm really glad I was able to help you a bit, because that, if truth be told, the work that you did helping, for instance, capacitate the MILF leaders on negotiations, that was rather inspiring, because there were not that many really from our peoples who had the capacity to do that. But then you had the secret weapon. Now I know. Zam was your secret weapon.
I'll add another person. Two persons, I think I'll take this opportunity already. Two persons who also supported me and helped me grow, in my work in peace building. First is my uncle, Attorney Abdul Dataya. I think not many people know that the former adjunct chair, Attorney Abdul Dataya, is my uncle, married to my aunt. And in the beginning, when he was joining our Consolidation for Peace in Penang, he really doubted what I could do into the peace process. I remember he was so skeptical about what is it that I'm doing. But I think towards the middle and after Sec 2 meetings, then he started really respecting my work. And I remember overhearing him telling another person that, look, Ayesah is actually doing good things, she's really saying a lot of what she's doing, makes a lot of sense, and what she's talking about is also so important. So that was so important for me that finally, my own uncle recognized me. And the second person would be Professor Abud Saidlinga. I think the same way, Professor Abud Saidlinga was also wondering what is it that I'm talking about. And especially that in the beginning, I come across as somebody who is not really very serious. I like to smile a lot and I like to talk about many things that you cannot really pinpoint what is it I'm serious about. So, and that is a normal notion of people who would meet me for the first time. But yeah, I was also very thankful that Professor Abudlinga was so patient with me, was willing to listen to all my nonsense start until I became more sensible, and until we could actually converse with each other in very serious and important matters. So Professor Abud Linga was also one of the mentors I have had, and I was so fortunate that he would also listen to me. And I think one indication that he also respected me as somebody who's making sense. There were actually a couple of times that he would send me to meetings in Cotabato City. Instead of him joining the meetings, he would actually delegate me to be attending those meetings, and he would tell everybody whatever Ayesah says, and that is also what I'm agreeing on. So that was the best. I think to me that was really the best indication that I have become more sensible as a person.
You know what you just shared about your uncle and Sam and Abud Linga. I think it's important for to stress that, because here are Muslim men, leaders in their fields, and they are listening. But what is also important to note, dear listeners, is that they would not have listened to you if you did not force through with your own conviction. So you have a voice, and you should not be afraid to use that voice, because you never can tell. That voice would now awaken in the others positive responses. Somebody said before, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So you are a woman, you have definite ideas, you have a voice, use it, because only you can make yourself inferior. And in your case and in mine, Ayesa, we just won't give up.
That's one trait that actually I would want to advise younger women. Being persistent, being consistent and persistent in what is it that you want to achieve. One more advice that I would want to give to younger Bangsamoro women and all the women out there is never to forget to learn, from our elders, from the from our earlier generations, because they really have a lot of things to say. Maybe some of us are so busy, because we feel that we are in the front line, so we know so much.
Mm.
We become experts. So all the older folks, the older generations, their ideas maybe will be only applicable in their generation. Time has changed now. Yes, that is partly true. But then again, they have been there, done that. So I'm sure there are many nuggets of history, nuggets of wisdom that our older generations can share with us. When I go home actually to Cotabato City, or even other places in Manila, I would really seek out, our leaders, and talk to them in a personal way, instead of focusing more about being too serious. We should really learn more from them, about how they live their life, just like what we've been sharing, today with our own lives, and how we become part of this conflict and peace process, experience in the Philippines. So we should always take that opportunity to talk to our older generations.
And I was just going to say, we shouldn't also forget that it's very important to cross the generational divide and talk to young people, because they have so much to share. And before we end our program, I really want our listeners to remember what the young Pakistani girl, Malala, Malala Yousafzai, what did she do to merit a Nobel Peace Prize? She was what? She was 11, maybe. She wasn't even a teenager yet when she got that award, and it was
It
because
was a child,
she
11-year-old
wanted
child.
to continue learning, and she wouldn't stop. But of course, like you and me, she was very lucky. She had a supportive father, a supportive
Mhm.
family. But Malala, little Malala, one little girl, wouldn't allow anybody to stop her quest for education. And then they threw acid at her face, right? But she
Mhm.
continued
Mhm.
still,
Yeah.
persevered, because she knew that education is the great equalizer. If she's educated, then she can really develop and soar. So, just because you're a child or a young girl or a young boy doesn't mean you cannot accomplish great things. And we should end with a really nice quote from Malala, which I hope will continue to inspire young girls and young boys. And she said, "I want every girl to know that her voice can change the world." And in Malala's case, it did start to do that. And dear friends, that's why Ayesa and I are hosting She Talks Peace. Talk peace, because we believe that if we use our voices often enough and we do not allow ourselves to be stopped or pressured or scared, then the world will listen. Right, Ayesah?
Very loud voice.
Loud voice. So I'm looking forward to our next episode, Ayesah. So, dear listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of She Talks Peace. This is Amina Rasul of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy saying, see you next time. Ayesah, over to you.
Thank you again, dear listeners, for joining She Talks Peace. And this time around, Amina and I shared our secrets or our personal stories. But please, we would welcome all your comments and feedback. And maybe you have some suggestions to us. You can actually email us at shetalkspeacepodcast@gmail.com. So we're looking forward that you join us again next time. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, Amina.
Bye.
She Talks Peace is brought to you in partnership with Podcast Network Asia and Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast. For more information, check out their website at podcastnetwork.asia and podmetrics.co.
The views and opinions expressed by the podcast creators, hosts, and guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy and position of Podcast Network Asia, the hosts of the program, or other programs of the network. Any content provided by the people on the podcast are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.